Right now, Governor Katie Hobbs lawyers up for a potential Supreme Court fight to protect Arizona's water rights. But will President Donald Trump have the last word?
Also on Sunday Square Off, a judge cancels the name of the Arizona Independent Party and lays the blame on Secretary of State Adrian Fontes. What's the fallout for Fontes, the party, and Arizona voters? What the country's new Homeland Security Secretary told Senator Ruben Gallego about the fate of the Fed's 2020 election investigation in Arizona. And slow your roll, Pops. Phoenix's new speeding cameras are watching and now ticketing drivers.
Them taking the reins is going to mean really hard times for Arizona. And so Arizona is going to have to sort of brace itself for litigation, both against the federal government and potentially against other states.
Rhett Larson, a professor of water law at Arizona State University, warning that the Trump administration could decide to drastically cut Arizona's allotment of Colorado River water. That would likely trigger a lawsuit by the state of Arizona, and it could all happen within just a couple of months. The Colorado River crisis is coming to a head. So, what's the legal, economic, and political outlook for Arizona in this existential battle? Joining us is Danny Seiden, Chief Executive Officer of the Arizona Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the state's largest business trade group. Welcome back to Square Off.
Thank you so much, Brant, for having me.
Good to see you again. What is the status of Colorado River negotiations, if there are any negotiations right now?
No, the status is not good. To be honest, here's just a quick 30,000 viewpoint. The lower basin states, which is really Arizona, Nevada, and California, have come to the table proposing real cuts, willing to take on what you would argue is way more than their fair share of cuts. The upper basin states, really led in part by Colorado, have said there is zero cuts that they can afford to take. Zero. So, and again, that's not an exaggeration. It's an odd thing. Here in Arizona, the flex for us always is, hey, we can save water without wasting it while we grow an economy. Whereas in Colorado, they've taken very little to no steps to do any of that. And their economy is not growing like ours is.
Now, we do have a junior position within this group in terms of water rights, don't we? That's a little bit debatable, and you mentioned at the lead-in of the show that the governor hired counsel, and we have some original jurisdiction here. We've won in the Supreme Court. Arizona has won in the Supreme Court on this issue in the past. We do have rights. There are obligations. For instance, the federal government has an obligation. They're sitting on reserves and reservoirs meant to feed into Lake Powell, and they haven't released what they're supposed to release yet. And part of the problem that we're seeing is the Secretary of Interior is following the guidance that kind of came out under Biden to withhold some of that. And again, the governor's office hiring counsel sends a strong signal. We are going to fight for our rights. We're going to fight for water in Arizona. And the upper basin states are going to learn just how good Arizona is at this. So what's at stake for your business members?
A lot. It's the certainty. Now, Arizona is an innovative state and will find ways through anything, but cost and certainty. If we all of a sudden have to take unprecedented cuts, unheard of cuts, what's at stake is not just for the businesses in Arizona. I'll tell you why, Bram. We right now in Arizona are the only end-to-end semiconductor suppliers in this hemisphere. So all the things that connect the world are made here in Arizona. We are 70% of the world's copper, domestic copper production comes from Arizona. The Yuma lettuce, so we feed 80% of the, of folks during wintertime with our Yuma lettuce. So we're feeding, defending with missiles and Raytheon and drones. That's all happening in Arizona. And that all is at risk in terms of long-term planning unless the president steps in. And we do believe he will. We do not believe he will continue to incentivize the bad behavior of governors like Polis in Colorado and elsewhere. He's going to recognize that here in Arizona, we are implementing his vision of what an onshore economy looks like. And we're counting on him.
Okay, you believe that President Trump will step in some fashion?
I do. Arizona is too important to national security, too important to the national economy for him not to. And again, you never want to incentivize bad behavior, and Colorado is displaying bad behavior.
And so we have seen in the past, and I was going to get to this, we've seen President Trump step into all kinds of negotiations, put his thumb on the scale for one party or another.
Very true.
Would he put his thumb on the scale for Arizona in this case? And this gets at the larger political backdrop, which is a midterm election. you're trying to read politics into it when that's fair. Politics exists in everything. But what he would be putting his thumb on the scale for is the national economy, which is happening here in Arizona. I have to give our leaders in Arizona a lot of credit. They do a good job for the most part of taking politics out of this discussion. One of the reasons why you don't see blame being thrown around out of the governor's office at the delegation and so on and so forth. We're all working together for the same thing right now.
And yet, it's impossible to take politics out of it, especially given the way this president operates.
But I'll say, you want to talk politics, this is good politics. The two most important swing districts, District 1 and District 6, often called, by the way, District 6 the majority maker. That's Congressman Siskamaya's district down in Tucson. You know, two cities that are the most dependent on the Colorado River, Scottsdale and Tucson. So those two districts play into that. So again, on the politics scale, this is great politics for him to weigh in. And not just that, it is the right thing to do. We are in Arizona since 1950s using less water than we did before. We are innovative. We're conserving. We're working so hard on augmentation. But on top of that, we're making the things that matter in the world right now.
Republican candidate for governor Andy Biggs says building a new dam on the Colorado and naming it after the president would solve the problem. Agree?
No, unfortunately, that would not solve the problem. Any and all ideas are good right now, and we'll take them. But to be honest, that would not in and of itself solve this problem. Again, the problem is management upriver with the upper basin states. What we need Congressman Biggs to do is to continue to work on President Trump to get him to weigh in for us.
And you went after Colorado on social media this past week. What was your argument?
My argument was, I know for a fact how these negotiations have gone. I know the good faith that our governor, Katie Hobbs, has brought into those negotiations. They've put up, again, Arizona's put up 27% in cuts, way more than we're even required to do. And Colorado sits there and says nothing. We can't afford to cut even 2% of our water use. Yet, Brandon, we know they're not growing their economy. Businesses are fleeing Colorado. Businesses are investing outside. It's the sixth most regulated state in the country right now. Whereas in Arizona, again, we're passing good policies, and that should be rewarded. Whereas Colorado, I do think, should be punished.
So, is a court case, a lawsuit in federal court, or the Supreme Court inevitable?
A lot of legal experts will say it appears it is inevitable. However, if the president weighs in, that shifts leverage and will force all of us back to the table. And Colorado will have to stop pretending that they can't find ways to be innovative. They can't find ways to copy a great state like Arizona and what we've been able to do with water.
What indication do you have that this is on President Trump's radar?
Anytime that President Trump is talking about what he wants to see happen in the economy, it's all about onshoring. It's about making things here. It's about making things in America.
Right now, he's talking about war.
Yeah, well, Bram, in order to conduct war, those missiles, they're all being made at Raytheon down in Tucson. The Copper Dome, as we like to call it now, that missile defense system, we're building that here in Arizona, and we need water to do that. They're dependent on the Colorado River down there.
How soon does the state need some kind of agreement or signal about what's going to happen?
The answer is yesterday, but because the drought conditions we're in, what experts call an historic drought now. We've been in it for a quarter century.
And a horrible winter. Just
horrible one.
Snow melt.
We just lived through the worst winter on anyone's memory, and no snow melt, no snowpack. So we anticipate more decisions out of Interior over the next 4 to 6 weeks on those upper basin allotments that they have to send down to things like Lake Powell that we were showing nice videos of, to start with. So we're anticipating decisions to be soon. We're looking for action out of the administration in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
All right. Danny Seiden, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Brandon. Thanks for having me.
When we come back, the Arizona Independent Party is no more. Why a judge blamed the man who signed off on the party, Democratic Secretary of State Adrian Fontes. But first, an update on efforts to remove Cesar Chavez's name in public spaces. Plus, Leadfoots beware, speed cameras are back. And 12 Plus is the streaming home of 12 News, where you can see all our Sunday Square Off coverage. Download 12 Plus on your Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV devices right now. And stay with us.